pleasure for me to introduce our next guest today. My next guest is a educator and the creator and founder of the Adulting Queen. She began her career working in higher education and currently works for a nonprofit that assists young adults aged 17 to 25 transitioning into adulthood. She provides inspiration and resources for individuals in an authentic way by bringing awareness to topics such as adulting through her podcast, Sipping Sundays, which I love. You guys need to check that out.
Thank you.
She does events, she does keynotes, workshops, merchandise, and more. This girl has a lot going on, and I love it. One of her
Yeah.
favorite things to do is brunch, hence the tagline Brunch, Travel, Adult, Repeat. I would like to introduce the lovely Amber Hurt to the show. Welcome, girl.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm super excited to be on the show.
Yes, thank you for being. Listen, let me tell the people how this all happened because
Yes.
it was nothing but God. I could say I really because I saw you actually. You had a
Yep.
vendor table at Vegan Soul Fest,
Yes.
and it was because I was waiting around because I was like, all right, we gotta go. We gotta catch the train back to New Jersey, and so my friend and I were right across, standing in like the bushes because it was hot that day.
No,
I
my God.
know
People
you
were
remember.
passing out. Like,
Yes,
they were
I
passing out.
almost passed out. Yes. So I was like off in the shade. I'm like, that that table looks really fun. Like it looks really nice. And I was like, I have to go over there. Like I have to go over there. So I went over there, I introduced myself. It was like 5 seconds. I was like, yeah, I gotta get the information. I left. Never thought that I would actually be sitting down with you and just talking, but I took a chance and I was like, you know what? Let me email her. Let me reach out. And look what happened. We just
Yay. I'm excited that you did. So many people,
yes,
when they stop by, they're like, oh my God, I'll reach out. And I always ask people that stop by my table, if you do want to connect, like, can you please reach out to me? Because I'm just meeting
yeah,
so many people in the day, and I'll follow you and I'll make a note of like how we met, but I will not remember to reach out to you. So thank
yeah,
you for doing
yeah.
that.
No problem. I mean, especially at an event like that, there's like tons and tons of
Thousands
people.
of
So
people.
yeah. So I know this is not really my first question, but is this was that like that's not your first time vending, but you've
No,
been vending
no.
for a long time.
Yeah, so vending, I started the Adults Queen, as we'll get into more. And the first
Mm-hmm.
thing of merchandise I had was actually a Sip and Sunday mug.
Mm,
And then I started with t-shirts that were church plus brunch equals Sunday fun day themed, going along with like
mm,
the Sip and Sunday. And when I moved to Baltimore is when I started vending because like it's a huge vending culture in Baltimore. Like any event you
yeah.
go to has a vendor. So I started out first at a store, New Being Human, and then
Mm,
from there, I just started getting opportunities from doing vending events with other people. So I've done ones at the Spice Suite in DC. I've done ones in
mm,
Philly. I've done ones in Baltimore. Um, Other places in DC. And like Vegan Soul Fest was my largest event that I've done, though. That was for
nice.
sure the largest event. There was like thousands and thousands of people there.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. I'm so happy for you and just I know I'm just jumping into the adulting queen world, but like to see everything that you built is amazing to me.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you. No, I think I've been more recently, like, I always knew it was amazing, but starting the Adulta Queen, for it to start for like just me literally starting it because I wanted to share brunch tips and help people navigate traveling pre-pandemic. I mean, people still can travel now, but traveling just looks very
yeah.
different. But that was like the bulk of what I was doing. And I worked at colleges helping students. So, like, I would be talking to them
Yeah.
about things too. So, from then to now to like, see what has happened. I'm like, this is not what I thought was going to happen. I just started this for
Yeah.
fun. And now I'm like, wow, this actually is something that it is a business. It's registered, all that stuff, but it
Yes.
is something that is going to be something bigger than me now, which is not what I had planned initially.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're already talking about it. You started this during the pandemic. But I mean, was it just because of the pandemic that inspired you to start the Adulting Queen, or was it something else specifically linked to that
Yeah.
really inspired you?
So I actually started the Delta V in 2019, January 2019. So this was
Oh,
before the pandemic. But what kicked
okay.
it off, I feel like more people getting on board, and more specifically like my friends and students at the time, was Sip and Sunday that I started in the pandemic. So when I
Gotcha.
started it in 2019 January, I was like, people always ask me where to go for brunch. People always ask me places to visit when they travel places. They're always asking
Mm,
me for travel hacks because at that point, like I was gone somewhere like once a month. I was always somewhere, whether that was a road trip, a flight, cruise, or whatever it was. Like I was always gone. And then
yeah.
for my students, like they would always like ask, like, how do you find an apartment? Like, how do I interview for jobs? I got a flat tire.
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, they be
That's
calling
the
me
one.
before they call their parents. I'm like, you need to call your
Yeah.
parents or your insurance, not me.
Right.
That's what like got the idea sparked in my head. And I actually was supposed to do an adulting brunch with one of my friends in February of 2019 to bring people together to talk about this because they had wanted to talk about like mental health or something. And I was like, yeah, I want to just talk about adulting and like this is horrible. And then that didn't even
Mm,
happen because people kept canceling. And it ended up just being like me and two of my friends going to brunch, having a great time. Absolutely not what
mm,
was supposed to happen. Like it was supposed to be like a more like formal interactive thing, but still worked out.
right.
Then we get to 2020 with the pandemic. And really before that, like the Adults and Queen was really just sharing stuff on social media. So it really was like the influencer era of like I'm just showing where I'm traveling to, I'm posting brunch places. It was tips
Yeah.
here and there, but it was more like the fun stuff. And then
Yeah.
when I started Sipping Sunday on Zoom in the pandemic, that's when it became more conversational of like wellness, buying a house. We did finding your purpose, goal
Mm,
setting, how to be an ally and support the Black community during all those things that were happening. Beyonce trivia, Adulting Queen trivia. Yeah,
yes.
it was like a range. It was literally all of the things. And
Yeah.
then I started doing the speaking engagements at schools. I moved to Baltimore, and in the past year and a half, 2 years, I would say is what really like grew it to people beyond my like my own audience of my friends, family, because that's where it really started with my friends, family, students. But now it's like I walk around in Baltimore and it's crazy that people are like, oh my God, like you're the adulting queen, or like, oh my God, I've seen your stuff. Or people stop by my table places and they're like, oh, I've seen this before. So that is cool to see how that has
Yeah.
grown from just a hobby and a fun idea to doing the Sip and Sunday on Zoom to the merchandise, speaking engagements, and now like my podcast and then planning for like five
Mm,
years in January.
yes. I mean, how does it feel at this point?
So I'm like, it's that is such a loaded question. Come to Sip and Sunday Live to hear all of the things.
That part.
But I think like 5 years feels like wow, like my business is basically in kindergarten. That's like first what I'm thinking. And I
Yeah.
think that offers like kind of almost like a rebirth, like restart, like
Mm,
reintroduction of what it is
yes.
because so many people that follow me have met it at different stages and I feel like now it's going to move towards like this is what it always is with the Adulting Queen
Mm,
because I tried out
yeah.
like so many different things too. Like I did creative circles for business owners, creatives, people who just wanted to like throw ideas out. I've done
Mm,
my event All Black Everything. I did like coaching one on one. I've
wow.
done the speaking engagements. I've done random like interviews, blogging. So now I really have kind of like solidified okay, like this is becoming something bigger than me and like what do I want that to look like for it to be a consistent message and consistency for like what the adulted queen is and does.
Yeah, wow. That is amazing. I mean, the whole thing about kindergarten, like you right.
Because you're
But
like starting a new stage, like you're in a different
right,
development bracket. Like there's just stuff
right.
that's happening for kindergarten. And
Yeah.
I love cute puns and themes. So I was like, the business is in kindergarten now, everybody. Like we're about
Yeah,
to
that's a good way to put it. And I also think about like the number five, right? Like for me, the number five always reflects change. It represents change for me.
yeah.
So anytime I do hear the number five, see the number five, I'm like, yep, something is on the horizon. Something's shifting here. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And of course, with anything, like you want to evolve, you want to develop more. And
Yep.
then such 5 years, 5 years goes by like that. So it's like it seems like you've
Yes.
done so much within the 5 years. So I'm just still excited to see what you do in the next five.
Yes.
So
And thank you for buying the ticket too. I appreciate
yeah,
you. So you're going
I
to be
am going to
there.
be there.
The listeners need to be there.
Yes.
Um, I definitely agree with that. And I think that like more recently in this year too, it really has been a lot of like reaffirmation and like signs. Like even you just reaching out and us having the conversation that we're having, like the timing of where I'm at in my business, stuff that's happened, and the questions and the pre things of what you sent that you want to talk about was like amazing. And I think
Mm.
that to think that like I've grown with my business and also just like things I've gone through that have happened in these 5 years is crazy. And for like the past two, I had quit two jobs in the past 2 years. So like to think that like I still was doing my business
Mm.
during that time, and that kind of is what helped it to propel, because I've basically always been working full time, doing the adults and
Yes.
clean, being an adult myself, and then also just whatever other random things I have going on. So that
Yeah.
also is what shifted that, like, okay, like I need to figure out how to consistently do this for myself and my sanity and my time, but also because the population of people that are being attracted to my business now are
Mhm.
showing that this is something that is needed. And I don't want to do it and it's not fulfilling or sufficient to those that are actually trying to like interact and utilize the business.
Yeah, that was the one thing you said that caught my attention too was quitting two jobs. You know,
Yes,
I
I
can
have that
relate.
on the spark notes for the when you asked about the struggles, because that is
Yeah.
in the spark notes for that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get to that because I could definitely relate just on the entrepreneurial journey as well because it's it's I mean, yeah, we can see it, yeah, I resigned, but it's just a detour. It's to our purpose. And I think that's exactly where you are right now. But
Yes,
woo,
yes,
I can't wait to get to that part.
yes. And you don't realize
But
that when you're going through it. You're like, this is a struggle. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, why am I in this
mhm.
place? Like, why did I do that? And I think that's what always keeps me going, is knowing that, like, even though this is really horrible, and like, I always keep saying, like, 2021 was probably like the worst year of my life, like, no
Mhm.
exaggeration. But I wasn't saying that when I was going through it. Like, when I was going through it, I was like, oh, like, this kind of sucks. Like, haha, like, trying to like
Mhm.
keep pushing through. But when I really like sat back, I was like, this year was like horrible. Like this year was
Wow,
really
yeah.
bad. Like,
And that's true. That's honesty. Like you gotta be
yeah,
real. But
yeah, for sure.
it's like it doesn't last always. So I have a quick
Amen.
question for you. During this time of like the I know you said that you were doing sipping Sunday and the it birthed into the adulting queen
Yep.
now. Were there any individuals, mentors, or role models that along the way that you can really give credit to for the adulting queen or like
Yeah.
inspired you, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, one, I everybody, again, you know me, I'm always gonna shout out my mom, my dad, and my sister, because I feel like that when you are an adult, you learn how to be an adult from those parents or guardians, family members that are taking care of you, that are looking after you, that are inspiring you or not inspiring you, that are taking care of you or again not taking care of you. Like all of that
Mm,
that you see and the people you're around impacts you significantly. And I've always been very close to my family. Thankfully, like I feel growing up, like we always were together. I didn't know like the drama of things going on. And I felt like for me, that just helped me to see like my family for like who they were and like remember like a lot of positive memories. Yes,
mm,
there are things that are negative that might have happened, but like that's not the first thing I think about when I think about my family. And that's not to say that
mm.
everybody's perfect, because they are not, but I
Right.
am eternally grateful and feel like this all started because of my parents and my sister. And
Mm,
tying into like just how I kind of developed into who I am, it's like my sister, we have an 11-year gap, and this wasn't something I really started thinking more about until I started the Adults and Queen, because I'm a very practice what I preach person. So like I'm not gonna put out all these life skills things that I'm not trying to implement myself. And
right.
the biggest thing I ask people is like, how did you become the adult you are today? Like what impacted you in your childhood, or like what are things and people that got you to where
Mm,
you are. So my
yeah.
sister, with our gap, I feel like just watching her is how I like just learn things about like college and like academic success
Mm,
and like getting a job, because we had such a gap that now doesn't matter that we're older, but like at that time, like she's graduating high school and I'm like 6 years old, like 6 or 7
okay.
in like elementary
Yeah.
school. So seeing somebody graduate high school and then seeing her graduate college and like getting her master's.
Yeah. It was like a
And
sneak peek.
Yes, and to point out too that my sister and I, we didn't live together. We didn't grow up together. We have different moms, but you would
Mm.
never know. Like we're super close. That is literally like one of my best friends. So you would
Oh,
never know. And I think that that again goes back to like my parents, like my dad making sure that my sister and I had a relationship, that we were around. My mom being welcoming to that, because like I just think like personally I wouldn't date somebody that has a child. I think that just could be very difficult, and conversations for another day. But to me, that would be difficult. And thinking about just the time we were in at that point as well, like my dad and my mom and I, we lived in New York, my sister's in Virginia. There's no FaceTime, there's no like video
oh
calls, there's
yeah,
no like just
right.
pick up the phone and you can see somebody computer. So like to think of that
Mm.
time of like how those interactions and stuff went, like just grateful for them and like how they navigated adulthood and like introduced certain things to me, is for sure the first way. And then just like
Hmm.
on some celebrity side, Issa Rae. I keep saying I'm the Issa Rae of my friends. Like that really is it.
Yes.
And that keeps impacting me to go. And then Lovey Ajayi Jones, who has Professional Troublemaker. I love
Mm.
that book. And she also has a podcast because it just shows you and tells you how to be bold in this world that is set up for capitalism and white people, honestly, and white men
Mm.
specifically to navigate. So being somebody that is not in the majority population, like how do you show up and
Yeah.
be yourself and challenge systems?
Wow. That's you said a whole hold on. First of all, the first thing, let's take this back. Cause like you I mean, there's a lot of layers there, right? So like with your family, you reminded me of my high school best friend. And same thing with her and her sister. Like that's why I say I could empathize with where you're coming from. Mind you, I'm an only child. I don't know that. But I could see how like, oh my God, like all right. But mind you, yes, you and your sister were in different states, but
Yeah,
you know, now you could, as you're growing up and you're at the age you're at now, you're like, well, what did you do when you were in this
exactly.
position, or so it's like, she could be that soundboard and that
Exactly.
advisor, and that's a beautiful thing to have, because a lot of people don't have it.
Yeah.
Not to point out myself, but I got
No, you find it in community in different
cousins.
ways.
Right,
And I
right.
think that like the thing is like my parents and my sister, they always have been that for me, but it really wasn't until like I guess like not even I became an adult, because I feel like I was always super independent and super responsible just as like a teen, as getting to
Mm,
college, like stuff like that. Because again,
yeah,
of my parents and the stuff they put me in and like getting me jobs and like teaching me how to do things. But I think that what really made me be like, oh my God, like you all did so much for me that like you didn't have to do, is when I became like an adultier adult in my tears that I have of like being an adult,
yeah,
adultier adult, or adultiest adult.
yeah.
Like that's when I realized it, because I was like, you all did not need to do all of this stuff for me and show up in all these ways and just like
Mm,
drop whatever you were doing to be here for me or send money for college and pay, because I've learned through
yeah,
hearing other people's journeys of adulting, like they don't always have that support system or they don't always have those people, and that
right.
significantly impacts you. It doesn't mean you're not going to make it, but it makes it
Mhm.
harder for you in that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that thing of community that I feel like I've been having a whole conversation about community for the past 2 weeks. So it's like you have to be mindful of who's around you. Like I
Yeah.
was literally just having a conversation yesterday just about, surrounding yourself with the people where you want to be or where you want to go. Like that's very important. Because I feel like yes, we're comfortable in our bubble and like we get to that certain level, but
Yeah.
also, hey, like I see, you being living in, I don't know what state that I want to live in. How can we connect and talk about that? Or,
Exactly.
I see you make, well, I'm not all about the money, but money's important. But it's like I see you making this bracket. Like, how can I
Yeah.
also make this bracket? You
Yeah.
know, those are the types of things that because knowledge goes a long way. That's what I'm trying
For
to get to.
sure. Yeah.
So,
And And I think that for community and something that impacts us as an adult is that like when you are first born and you are a kid, you're not getting to choose your community. And then when you become an adult, based on how that community interacted with you or didn't, impacts you trying
Mhm.
to seek out and find your own community as an adult. And again, not
Mhm.
impossible, but if you've had traumatic experiences or neglect, or like you just felt that like your parents or siblings or aunts, uncles, whatever didn't do what like you might have wanted them to do for you, that translates into
Mhm.
how do you interact with people, because the people
Yeah.
that you subconsciously as a kid like got their like energy transferred, like all that stuff shows
Yeah.
up as an adult for you.
Yeah. But oh God, Pastor Mike just says it all the time. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
You know what he
it's
says.
going, and that was one thing I wrote down too. Because for interviewing and being on your podcast, I had to write down my stuff, so I made sure I didn't forget anything because you had such great questions, and I want to make sure that I'm getting across to everybody what
Yeah.
we need to get across.
Yeah, no, I appreciate. Listen, I'm sitting here with my pen too.
I know I have mine
um,
too. Key to adulting: always keep a
yeah,
pen or your notes app ready because you never
yes,
know.
you never know. But what is? It's kind of like what's not addressed is transferred. Kind of pretty much what
Yeah,
he says. Very much implied. Sorry, Pastor, but it's just like when we think, and this is like deep on a deeper level where it's like when you do have, like you were saying, that family member that couldn't show up the way you
yeah,
wanted to, do you repeat the cycle, or do you like just not address it, or because you grew up that way?
yeah.
No, you address it, you heal, you move forward and break the cycle.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
I'm all about generational cycle breakers. Like
I
that's
agree.
who I am, and I feel like that's who you are,
Yes,
and
for
who we
sure.
connect to. So
And it's
that's
hard to do that and be that, and that's why I love Ajayi Jones's book is such a great like resource, because that's what she talks about, like how do you be bold and how do you stand up for yourself, or even standing
Mhm.
up for others that aren't able to like stand up or speak for themselves or just are scared to. And then a
Right.
book club that I'm a part of, the book I never can remember the title of the book, but it's a book about boundaries and has those four colored squares on the front. I don't remember the name.
Mm,
I'll tell
I
it to you
don't.
after this. But
Yeah.
that is a great book as well so far. And it's talking about, again, how all this stuff starts with your family or whoever it is that you are calling family. Like, that's the hardest group to like navigate throughout your whole life, because they've known you for your whole life and they are going
Yes.
to sometimes treat you as if you're still a kid or view you as like you came from this family, like you said, like, so this is how we act, or like this is our culture, or this is the norm, but like that doesn't have to
Right.
be.
Right. Right. Oh, I just remembered what it was as you were talking. He said, "What is not transformed is transferred." I knew it was another T, but
Yeah,
that is it.
yeah,
Um, but I actually want to pivot a little bit, um, because I mean, we were talking before about your challenges, so
yes.
definitely share one of those experiences or challenges that you faced and really how you navigated that.
Yeah, so this one I definitely had to write down, and because the one I'm going to share, which ties into the rest of them, is vulnerability. And not that
Mm,
I'm completely unvulnerable. I am vulnerable by choice, and like I'm not just forfeiting information to people. Like, and I think that's a difference too of like how you share your story matters. So like for the instance of when I was like figuring out with my job stuff, like I wasn't necessarily sharing that on the Adulting Queen. And so that's why people are always so shocked about when I'm saying it, because they're like, oh, like, I had no idea because of what like you're posting and stuff on the Adulting Queen. I'm a
mhm,
person that like I can't share as I'm going through a difficult time, because tying into the vulnerability is asking for help and like just being able to set boundaries and stuff with people or reestablish boundaries. Because if I'm
yeah,
like going through a tough time, I'm really not going to say much. Like I'm not just gonna like randomly reach out and be like, hey, like I'm going through a tough time. However, if we get on the phone and
yeah,
you're asking me some questions or something, I'll like say something. And what really helped me to realize that like I need to do better at this, still a work in progress. So any of my friends, people who know me listen to this, I'm a work in progress, like everybody else. But
right,
I think that what helped me realize that I really need to let people know what's going on is that like I was just getting like overly stressed or trying to like do a whole bunch of things. When 2021 came about, basically the timeline of that year was like my uncle passed away, I went through a breakup.
Mm,
I wasn't enjoying my job anymore. I was a year into like a new city, so I was like, do I still even want to be here? Because like I went through this
mm,
breakup. We're in the pandemic still here, and like I don't really know anybody. Um, like work again is not going well. Most of my friends and family are in like other places. And then my grandma passed away. A lot.
wow.
That's just a
Wow.
synopsis.
Right.
So I think in that time, I really was just like, just going, going, going. And I was like, no, this is actually too much for one person to have to go through all these things like back to back to back. And then
Mm,
that impacted and kind of like trickled over into 2022. And then that's when I decided to leave my job. And then 2023, I was in a new job, but it was horrible. Like the first time I left my job was because of just personal preference of transition back from the pandemic ultimately and like poor leadership. But that's everywhere.
mm,
And that place it was manageable, but I just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. The second job was like horrible. Like my mental health was severely impacted. Like I would be like leaving meetings like crying. Like I just had to keep calling my sister and being like, girl,
wow.
I am not okay. Like, what can I
Yeah.
do? Like, whatever is going on here cannot continue to go on. And I mean, I stuck it out for a very long time from like August is when it started going downhill all the way to February. So that's like 6 months, actually. That's a very long time
Wow.
that I stuck
Yeah.
it out at that
Yeah.
establishment. But I think that goes back to the vulnerability of like, how do I express to people that I need help or that like this is just not okay? And then I think for
Mm-hmm.
that job example is that like when I was expressing to like supervisors and managers, which I didn't expect them to care about me in the way that like my friends and stuff do, but it's like if I'm telling you I'm not okay and you're impacting it and you're just continuing to pile on to that,
Yeah.
like that's saying more
Right.
about you than it is about me. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You gotta let that go. That is that
yeah,
is the one thing. It's like you can't let I hate to put it that way, but you can't let a job affect you like that. Like it's really it's like yes, I want to come to a place of business, a job where I'm able to function. If I'm not able to function, yeah, I gotta go. Like it doesn't
exactly.
sometimes we figure okay, like we could stick it out like you said 6 months, like oh after 6 months we gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
This is just temporary, but when you see it, it's like you look up and you're like, oh wow, this is my everyday. Like I am not
It's
Amber.
horrible.
Like where's Amber? Like
And
yeah,
that's the thing,
that's
like, I really
crazy.
didn't feel like myself anymore, but I didn't really, like, realize that in the moment, and that was actually another one that I wrote down of, a struggle is separating myself from my career because I was in higher education. I still technically am, I just work for a nonprofit, I'm not at a school. So this is my first time
Okay,
not working at a college or, like, high school, middle school. But
gotcha.
career, I feel like we really need to separate yourself from your career because you can be amazing at it, but like God forbid something happens, like they don't care. And it does suck to say that, but they really don't because it's a business. The people who
Mm-hmm.
work there might care about you, or like you might have good relationships with your coworkers or your supervisor, but it's a business. So like overall, like you die, you're sick, like you need to leave. Like they're just like, okay, here's a box. We'll send your family some information and see you later. Like,
Yeah. What? You're really replaceable. Like
yes.
on
And
to the
so
next.
exactly. So I think that that was extremely difficult for me also because I was super involved with a professional development organization and I started well not even started. I was always involved with it, but I was chairing a conference and like that experience wasn't going well, but it really wasn't going well because my job wasn't going well and like everything was trickling
Mm,
over, but I was trying to still keep doing everything. And I was like, no, something's got to give. So I quit that and like that was sad. Honestly, looking back now, I'm like, this was way for the better for me that I left that, but
yeah.
it was sad because I was involved with this literally like my entire career and like also my entire career feels like it's falling apart and people are
Yeah.
making it seem like it's me and I'm the problem. And are there things I could have done differently? Yes, but it's when your mental health is impacted, like you are obviously accountable for yourself, but it's like your mind is like clouded and jaded. Like you can't function in a healthy place when you don't feel like good inside. So
Yeah.
there are things
Yeah.
I could have done differently, but I felt like at that time, like I didn't have the capacity to do anything differently. Like I did what I could do to make it through that time.
How did you jump back, or even not even jump back, because I hate to put it that way.
No, I
You
get what
have to
you're
go
saying
through,
though.
yeah, but you have to go through a process, right? Like you have to heal whatever was done, address it,
Yes.
and then come back to, I want to say yourself, but like a new version of yourself, because ultimately
Yes.
you went through something that was horrific, so it changes you. It changes your outlook, your mindset, everything.
Yeah,
So, what
for
was that
sure.
process for you?
So one, my word for 2023 was evolve. And little did I know what was gonna transpire throughout the
Yeah.
year. But I've been picking words for each year since like 2015, 16. So this year the word was
Mm.
evolve. And I was like, this is crazy what has happened from January to now, but we're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, my sister again helped tremendously of just being a sounding board and like just listening. And I'm even my friends because like this was a time when I was explaining to them exactly what happened, like what I did or didn't do, like what was happening at the job, like all that stuff. And then eventually
Mm.
people were like, yeah, no, this is definitely not like a you problem. Like it's not at all. You've exhausted all your options. You've tried your best. It's not a you
Yeah.
problem. What ultimately ends up happening was either that they were going to let me go after a certain date, or I was could choose to leave earlier. So I chose to leave earlier because I was not going to be at that place for another day longer than I needed to be.
Right.
That was in February, and I didn't start my new job until June. And the first time I left my job, I didn't work from February to March, so it was a way shorter timeline, shorter than I thought. And I appreciated it, but now looking back, it's like I could have probably stuck it out a little longer and found a job that was a better fit versus going to
Mm.
like the one I did. But
Yeah.
I think that like just trying to rest and trying to like figure out what was it that I actually wanted to do, because as many times as I applied to jobs outside of my field of higher education, when I would get interviews for them, I never was excited about it as I was for something that was working with youth or young adults, helping them like navigate things.
Yeah.
So I just took time to figure out what I wanted to do. I was applying to all different types of things. And then eventually I was like, okay, I just have to trust this process and like wait to find something that is going to be working with young adults. And thankfully, in the meantime, I was doing the Adults and Queen and I had more time to do more vending events, to do speaking engagements, to do content and stuff like that. So that's why I think people didn't realize I wasn't working, because the Adults and Queen still was always going. And I've
Yeah.
actually never taken a break from the Adults and Queen since I started it in 2019. But in 2024, that will be changed for sure.
Yeah. I commend you for that though, because even while going through all of that mentally, you knew that the Adulting Queen was home, and that actually is what makes Amber Amber. And you're like, "Oh, I feel good in this place." So it it
Exactly.
it never really left at all. And yeah,
Yeah.
because like once you like mentally, if that's disrupted, I throw the whole table. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
no, you needed that. You needed that grounding
Yeah.
space.
And I mean, that's why I also just appreciate the Adults and Queen as the Adults and Queen, because somebody asked me this question and it was a very good question. They were like, could you see the Adults and Queen like somebody else either being the face, or like, would you ever like remove yourself or have different like positioning on the business? And
Hmm.
I think that's why the 5 year is so important to me, to reestablish that, like, yes, I'm the Adulting Queen and I started it, but the Adulting Queen is kind of an extension of me. And eventually, like, it's going to have to be other people, because, like, I cannot sustain this by myself in the way that I
Yeah.
want it to grow and the way that, like, people can benefit from it. So I
Right.
think that people saying, like, oh, you're the Adulting Queen, you're the brand, the business, is cool, but I'm Amber still, then addition the Adulting Queen, and then eventually
Mm.
it will be like Amber is the Adulting Queen, but Amber is not the entirety of the Adulting Queen, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
because the values and stuff, like how you had asked, they really were picked thinking of, if somebody interacts with this business, what do I want them to feel and get out of it? And just ironically, those are the same things that I as a person feel and view as well. But I really did think like separate myself and like what do I want the Adults and Queen to represent as a business? And it just
Yeah.
happens that it goes with what I as a person like and do and feel and think as well. Will that always be the
Yeah.
case? Maybe not, but right now, like that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and that's usually how it starts off, even when we think about like our ideal client or ideal um person of interest, customer, whoever, like they're usually like
Yeah.
very similar to us. So I could definitely empathize with that. I was thinking while you were talking too, I know um coming from like because me as a spiritual life coach, I help professionals really transition from the 9 to 5 space to that
Yep.
purpose driven entrepreneurship, but just through mindset shifts and spiritual alignment. So I was like thinking, I'm like, well, I know you said 2024, so is 2024 marking like you want to do this full time, or you're like moving inch, like we still like kind of inching?
Yeah. I just really appreciate this conversation. We could do this all day.
Yes.
This is great. I think like for now, because one, I love my new job, and thankfully, like I basically am doing the Adults and Queen at my job now. So I think like
Oh,
I have like a couple more years of working full time because to be honest, I don't want to deal with this insurance and all that stuff on my own right now. I'm handling a lot as adulting, and that is just not one of the things that I want to take on.
yeah,
That is
absolutely.
literally one of the main things, but also just like the consistency of everything. Like I really feel like I have learned and gone at the same time, learned and like been working and living at the same time with the Adults and Queen, but I really
Mhm.
want to, if it's going to go full time, have people employed to help. So I think my focus is for 2024 is the like not it's not rebranding like but reestablishing like what the Adult and Queen is, what you can look
Mhm.
forward to in 2024. And that's why I started the Sip and Sunday as a podcast because people love podcasts. And that is a sustainable, tangible thing that can always be looked at, regardless of if somebody finds me tomorrow, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, like that will still be there. So
Yes.
I would want it to be full time eventually. I just don't know when. I think the priorities is continuing to build my audience, reestablishing what it is, what it does, and getting people on board that way to then
Mm,
be able to do the expansion or like leave my job or whatever. But again, thankfully,
yeah.
because I do love the role I have now, and there might even be ways that in the future they pay me to do specifically like the Adulting Queen. So
Yes.
we will
Yes.
see.
As soon as you said I do the adults and queen at the job, I was like,
Yeah.
well, you already said it. You're
And then
already
they
doing it.
also like they knew because that's another part about when I left the last job and I went into job searching. Like, depending on the feel and the vibe, like I would mention the Adult and Queen, and especially because that's what I was kind of doing in the interim of not working. So I had
Mm,
mentioned it like on this interview about what I do with the Adult and Queen, like how that is, and they're super supportive of it. And always are asking about things. They actually were like, "You didn't tell us about Vegan Soul Fest," when one of my coworkers happened to come and sends a picture.
oh,
So
wow.
they're
Oh,
very supportive of that, which is helpful. And I don't like
yes.
negate my obviously work for the Adult Queen, like vice versa. I just try to think of ways to infuse both of them. So like I send the students the resources that I have from my podcast, from my website, like my social media, stuff like that.
Yes. Oh, Amber. Listen,
Listen, it was a
you
rough time before, but we are on the up and up now.
you need to give yourself some, listen, after this whole podcast, just pour some wine, do what you
Because
got to
you
do and
see, I have my
celebrate
water
yourself.
now because
Yeah.
we're almost done with the work day.
Okay. Like I'm so happy. This really this whole you saying it's great. It's great for me too. Like my heart is smiling. I'm sitting here like wow, like, and just to hear your journey so far, it's like it's really inspiring me.
Yeah.
And man, like despite I always say despite what when any one of us go through, like we always come out more resilient and just we
Yeah.
always got the victory. Like that's the one thing.
One thing I wanted to say though, because I know that you are a spiritual coach and the Adulting Queen, as we've talked about, doesn't necessarily push spirituality, but I have a lot of messaging that goes back to those things. And
Mm,
I started watching Church Transformation Church a lot during 2020, and that's really what got me back into it.
yeah.
So I definitely still watch Transformation Church. I switch it up, sometimes do Social Dallas. What
Oh,
was the other
nice.
church? Yeah, I like Social Dallas, and I learned about them from when Pastor Madhu came to Transformation Church. So
Yeah.
watch that. And I mean, for me, that is something that is very grounding, and it is what does help me and get me through and like help me figure out like what direction I take. Like, does something feel right? I will
Mm,
say that like at certain periods, which sometimes this happens to all of us, that like at certain periods, like you're really like invested or you're really like, God, what is going on? Like, I need help. So I try my best to make an effort of doing it more regularly. But the things that I watch or listen to, like the podcast or like my Peloton meditations, I feel like I
mm.
personally am still getting that message in a different way. So yeah, it's not
Yeah.
directly from the Bible, it's not directly from church, but to me, I feel like I can connect the dots. And then if I'm going back and watching a sermon or something, and then I listen to a meditation from Peloton, I'm like, we just were talking about this. Like all of it connects in a different way.
Yes. Yeah. He's always communicating with us,
Yeah,
like there were times where I didn't pick up the Bible at all. But in ways through people, through like just my environment, he would still talk to me.
exactly. And I think that
But
that's something that's different for like our generation because I think older
yeah,
people felt like you always have to be at church, you have to be reading your Bible, you have to be doing certain things. And it's not that like you should never like just completely negate those things, but I think
right.
that the way that our world has changed, like I got back into church so much because it was virtual and that was easy for me to watch versus having to get up. I'm not a morning person. God knows he created
Yes.
me this way. So like I'm a
Right.
morning person. So to get up at like 8, 9 o'clock to get ready to go to church, like it's just not something that was a thing that I wanted to prioritize. But waking up, making breakfast, being able to turn it on TV, like comfortably take my notes, like feel how I need to
Yeah.
feel. But once I did get more comfortable with watching church again, like I didn't mind going in person to a church here and there.
Mhm.
And it felt more comfortable to me too, because church is its own culture. And I feel like if you haven't been in a while, you're like trying to know what's going on because they don't announce like this is when we do this is when we do that. Like, when
Yeah.
you end up at different times, like people don't always know when you go to church. But
Right. Right.
starting with watching made me feel more comfortable going into actual church again.
Yeah, I can empathize with that as well. I mean, I think it's also finding the church, right, within your own vicinity that
Yeah.
makes you feel comfortable, feel like home, and you're like, okay, I think this is the one because I don't feel like I found that yet. Not to say I will never in, where I live, but
Yeah.
when I went to TC, I was like, I feel at home. Like I feel
I
like
need to make it there. I want to go in
yeah,
person finally.
we're gonna go either you and I can plan a Sunday to go on a regular Sunday, but definitely I'll be back in the building for next year's conference. Like
When are the date? Well, I'm gonna write that down.
I don't
The
know the
details.
dates yet. I don't but listen,
I'm gonna write that
I
down.
definitely have next year's conference in mind for sure.
No, I will write that
But
down. Church.
But yeah, definitely something to think. I mean, that's a part of adulting too, is just like the spirituality. Whether you identify with spirituality or religion,
Yeah.
that's your choice. But I believe as an adult, we should always have that in our spiritual bag. Like it should be our armor,
Yeah.
as we say, and because this life is hard, and like who else do you lean on besides him? I mean, granted, you have your option. You have
Yeah.
free will to figure that out. But,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, and that's why I
uh,
think adulting is like multifaceted. And the first sip of Sunday was actually about wellness, but we didn't just talk about like physical or mental health wellness. We talked about like occupational, spiritual, financial, like all those things tie into you being a person. And
mhm,
being an adult is just really not one thing. Like it is one thing after another that is always happening. And I feel like you need to figure out like what are your priorities or what do you want to focus on because everything cannot be the priority at once because then you'll just fall apart because this is too much. So like somebody
yeah,
might not want to prioritize going to church and that's completely okay because they can get their messages other ways, they can figure it out, but eventually they might want to go back
right.
to church and they're going to sacrifice, like maybe they work on Sundays but they're not going to go to work anymore because they want to go to church.
Mm,
Like you really
yeah,
get to pick and choose like what you want to do for yourself, and I don't think that people like that for adulting because they think not everybody, but sometimes people think like, oh, you don't go to church, like, how dare you? Or like, oh, like,
Mm.
you don't work out, like, why don't you do that? Or like, you don't like vegetables, like, you're a grown adult. Those things do sound crazy, but like to that person, like, that's what they want to do. And eventually, if they change their mind, they change their mind. And
Yeah,
if they don't, they don't.
right. Everybody's on their own journey.
Exactly.
I am not the same version of myself I was 5 years ago. Like we picked up things, we put down things, don't pick them up
Yeah,
again. So
exactly.
I have a great question. I've been wanting to ask you. Well, actually, I have three great questions lined up for you, and I'm sure because I'm just curious. So like, what's that surprising or unconventional rule of adulthood that you discovered in your journey that you believe that other young adults should know?
Everything costs money, for one. Like, and today I just actually met with my group of students and we went through budgeting, but more specifically, like calculating how much they actually make, how much they're going to
Mhm.
make in this time period with me. I pulled up how much a new car costs for them, how much a used car
Ooh,
costs. I compared a luxury apartment versus a regular apartment. And then everything that I put up there, I had an asterisk because I was like, this doesn't include taxes, fees, anything like that. We
that's
talked about
crazy.
like paying bills, like late fees. There's fees in there that you don't know what it is, like, and you can ask them that. So I think like the everything costs money. Like we do laugh and joke and say like if we knew that like the life was going to cost this much, we would have started saving in kindergarten. But like
Mm,
everything costs money, like everything. You can't even like go fill your tires up with air for free now. Like at the gas station, I thought it was free. It's like quarters. You need to put them in there.
even for Wawa, y'all
I
have
still
Wawa?
we do, but I went to I forgot. I think it was actually Royal Farms, which is free, but it was
Oh,
broken. So then it goes back to
okay.
my next point that if it's not one thing, it's another.
It's another.
That's
Yep.
literally so I
That is a
literally wrote it
fact.
down. Everything costs too much money, and if it's not one thing, it's another. So
That is a fact. I mean, every day you wake up, it's like as soon as your feet hit the floor, you're like, oh, a cent has been caught. Like even when you sleeping, honestly, I mean, shoot,
because if the heat's
you,
going still, the AC is going, it's
yeah,
costing you money. But I think
right.
that like everything costs money and we're saying yes, everything's going up, but the other part is like somehow we're still making it. And it feels like how are we still making it? But we are somehow. And I think that like I I don't think this is going to change that the world is just run by capitalism and that's like the thought behind everything. Like even at
Mm,
the post office, I could have sworn at one time at the post office that you could go and just get like tape and labels and stuff. The lady did not even want to give me a label. Like I would have had to pay for like the priority label. I
oh
was like
God,
this is outrageous. Like
that is wild. Well, that's a whole
crazy.
different story. That's a whole other podcast to talk about the post office because,
Oh my god.
whoa.
Yeah.
Well,
So
let
things
me
just all cost money for no reason.
tell you what actually happened this morning. I was doing some adulting myself because the enrollment period is open
Yeah, open
for health
enrollment. Yep.
insurance.
Yes.
So I called my insurance company. They had me on the phone for an hour. I had like one or two questions being bounced around from like three to four people. Oh
Yeah.
wait, you need to talk to this person. Oh no, I can't answer that because I only what
If it's
is
not one
going
thing,
on?
it's another.
It's another. I was like, but this is the thing though. It's like, yes, you try to be calm, cool, and collected, but like I'm not understanding the system here. It's like we could
Yes.
we could advise people like yes, do a ABC when you call the insurance company, but what about the people on the other side of the
Yes,
phone?
that is literally the bane of my existence and why I try to avoid calling people sometimes. I'd rather talk to the chat box than the thing calling. But I'm not gonna lie
Mm,
either. If somebody is giving me a runaround, I start getting an attitude on the phone. I try to be nice in the beginning, I really do. But after
yeah,
you're like insulting my intelligence or talking to me like I'm like dumb when you're not making sense, like that's what
yeah,
makes me mad. Especially when you call insurance companies of any type, like car, home, your health insurance because
yeah.
I don't know who actually understands these systems. Like I don't the people who work there do not. Like they're
They
just
don't.
telling you what's on paper. But you're like, "Okay, like I see HMO. But what does that mean? Like, what is the
Right.
real difference between that and a PPO? And they'll be like, well, this is your deductible on both. This is your copay
I
on
know
both.
that.
Exactly.
It's on
Like,
the
I can read that. I can see that by on the paper. I can see that. But like, how do I know if my doctor's in network without having to do all this searching before? Like, it's crazy. Or you sign up
yeah.
for the health insurance and then your doctor's not in network and you can't switch until the next year.
Yeah. It's they make, I think they purposely make us crazy. Like they want us to be crazy.
No, I
I believe
agree.
that.
And that's what I actually was gonna say. Like when we were saying like if it's not one thing, it's another, and how you
Yeah.
are interacting with people on the phone. I really do believe that, and that's why I get frustrated because I'm like I'm a sensible person. I don't know everything. I'm not saying I know everything, but if you're telling me something that just does not make sense to me, I need you to help me
Yeah.
understand like why that is what it is. But there's usually never an answer of why it is why it's like that. So that
Right.
is really
Right.
what makes me mad, and that's why I get an attitude with people on the phone
Yeah.
because that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I can't even picture you with the attitude. That's the crazy
And that's
part.
the part, like, and that's what the thing is. Like, I'm usually like super like nice, like mellow tone. Like, I really
Right.
not many things really do upset me, which is great. But on the
Mm-hmm.
phone, when people are just like playing with my time or like I'm trying to understand my bill or money, I really, really get upset. Like,
Yeah. Well, I hope I never see that side. I don't
well,
want to
you
see
won't
that
be on
side.
the customer service end of the phone.
You know, that part. So I know we're pulling up on our time a little bit, but before we jump into our next segment, I definitely want to ask you this question. Because I feel like with all of, yes, the good times and the bad times of adulting, like what is that one superpower that you would, I guess, give to every young adult that we could succeed in adulting and just navigating through it? Like, what would it be and how would it transform the experience?
Yeah. It's funny because as I was like thinking through all these questions, I didn't see how it all tied together, but they literally all tied together because I put critical thinking and problem solving skills for one, because
Ooh, okay.
these
Yeah.
kids, like, you can send an email that says the sky is blue, the grass is green, fish swim in the ocean, and they're going to be like, what color is the sky? I'm not sure where the fish are. Like, did you look at any of this email
They did
at
not
all?
read. They did not read.
Or it'll be like, oh, like click this link and you'll find your pay stub. They're like, I clicked it, but I don't see it. And I'm like, well, did you go under payroll? And then they're like, oh no. And I'm like, I sometimes I will give you step by step by step by step by step. But other times,
Yeah,
like I'm telling you because like the one part because I want you to try to think ahead and do like
right.
some more for me. And then they just don't. And it's so sad. Like even like one example, like a student, he got paid and then he was like, oh, I don't have any money for the bus. And I was like, you just got paid. Like, what do you mean you can't come in person because you don't have money for the bus? Like, what did you spend your money on? Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's
I
well,
don't
would you
get
say
it.
common sense would be the superpower? I think a dazzle, a little sprinkle.
Yeah, I do, but I think the only reason why I'm like hesitant is because common sense, people have a different idea of what that looks like. So to him, saying that he's not coming because he doesn't have money for the bus seemed like no problem. Like there's no issue. So I really have to sit back sometimes before I respond to students or respond to like young people to be like, let me just take a second and remember that they are a young person and my job
Yeah,
is to help them, but I'm just confused. Like, why did you think that? And
yeah.
then the next one would be financial literacy, but not in the sense of like
Mhm.
how to spend money, like how to do like how to make money quick or like how to get to a certain bracket or something, but more so like
Right.
how to avoid debt and like
Yes, that's a big
not
thing.
get trapped in that, because once you do, it's like the poor just keep getting poorer because of interest, because of fees, because people are not explaining things to you. And I think that as
Yes,
a young person, like this is really your opportunity to get yourself started off the right way. And life happens, you might need to pay your medical bills, you might get into a car accident, you might need to repair your car, things that are
right.
hard to save up for. But if you could avoid like the wants, putting yourself in debt, and it's the needs putting yourself in debt. I think that's a big difference. But just trying to
Yeah.
avoid debt at all costs early on and understanding that.
Yeah. Those are some good superpowers. I wish I had them. Like I look
I
even
would have started
today.
saving in kindergarten.
Yes, yes. Like even today though, it's like I mean, I feel like no matter how old you are really. I mean, I know you target young adults, but I feel like even like onward, upward,
Yeah,
like it it's needed. Um
yeah,
we need a refresher in the way that things are changing in the world too. It's like
yeah.
everything needs to be kept up to date. But we
And
don't
nobody's
really
telling
have
you.
or you're not even I mean, I don't feel like I wouldn't say everybody, but you have to do some digging, which is unfortunate. It should be on the front, in the forefront for us to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to address debt. Let me just grab this. But
Well, here's
no,
the
I have
adulting
to.
queen now, so
Well, yes, girl, we
but
gonna talk.
also the interesting thing I feel like that has happened over these 5 years though is the population. So obviously I started this 5 years ago. I was 20. How okay, I can math is not coming to me quickly right now. I'm 32 now. Subtract 5. That's where we were when I started
Gotcha.
the adulting queen. But
I
I was
got you.
working with college age students, so that was 18 to 21. And then like I I've had a hard time figuring out the marketing of the population to be generic because I don't want to say it's for all adults. In theory, when the adulting queen is the adulting queen, has all these people and different things doing different things, it can be for
Mm,
all adults. Right now, I cannot keep tailoring everything to different like different populations. So I feel like definitely for the 17 to 25 year olds, but because I keep getting older and I'm also putting out stuff for myself and for my friends and for my family, and like we keep getting
yeah.
older, that's where I feel like it's also like not an older population, because it's crazy to think like I'm in the older adult category now, but like it's a mix. And I do feel like everybody can benefit from the adulting queen. But as a marketing stance, like when I just say it's for everybody, it isn't getting me like where I want it to go. So I say millennials and Gen Z, which millennials goes up to 40, and I think Gen Z the earliest is like early 20s or like mid 20s now for Gen
Mm,
Z. So that's a wide range of people, but I don't always think that those are the people that are trying to seek it out because they need it. It's usually like either older, and the
mm,
younger people aren't like jumping on board because they don't realize they need this. But they're just the
yeah.
population that's easiest for me to get in front of because of my job and my experiences working at colleges. I'm able to go speak in colleges and speak in middle schools, high schools, whatever, for those
Yeah.
types of things.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, it's who you're more accessible to, right? Especially when it comes to business, like you want to at least start there first.
Yeah,
But your audience definitely will grow as you grow.
yeah,
So, but
and
that's
I
a
think.
good, oh,
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
go
No, you
ahead.
go ahead.
No, no, I was just thinking, just narrowing it down to even like the generations, I think it's a good idea because I feel like we get so caught up with the numbers of like this
Exactly.
age. And if I'm not like, if I'm 26, God forbid, I can't relate. Like, no.
And yeah. And that's why like I kept it at millennials and Gen Z because it's that big gap. And I also feel like millennial and Gen Z research is getting very trendy and people are like wanting to do it and wanting to learn more, and like especially Gen Z. So that's why I like targeted it and said it like that. And also like I'm a millennial and I'm always going to be a millennial, but it's like to think like when I turn 40, 45, like there's going to be new
Yeah.
problems. And so I'll still be in touch with the young adult like age range because I
Mm,
work with young adults and I pride myself on actually being able to understand them and not just impose things on them. And that's also what helps me with the adults and queen is actually listening and actually wanting to help and like reinforcing that to them. I'm not trying to be like your old grandma, grandpa, auntie that's like, oh, like you need to do this. Like this is how these things work. The world's going to be
yeah.
so different in 10 years that I can't tell them to do what I'm doing today in 10 years.
Right.
But when I
Right.
turn 40, there'll be new problems for me and my friends and my population, which also is like what the adult queen serve, just because again, who I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. Wow. This is like really mind blowing. I think I'm gonna keep saying it. I like you said, we could be here forever.
We might need a part
But
two. We might need to get
I
some questions from the listeners or something
yes,
because
yes, I would love that. I definitely feel that this part we can't wrap it up here. We can't. I will keep that on my list for sure.
and you'll
But
be on
before
Sipping Sunday too when I bring it up, bring it back. So you will
yes,
definitely be one of them.
I I cannot wait. I listen, I'm not like a brunch girly, but I like to eat. I like to eat. Don't ask me where we going, but
But that's fine because I have the places.
listen,
So
hey, I want to before we go off the air, I definitely want to dive into our two segments.
yes.
So my first segment is called Empowerment EP. I named it Empowerment EP because I mean we all listen to music, and I want to know your your top three songs right now that really have it's like a source of strength or inspiration for you on your journey right now.
Oh, this is
So
good. This is good. So
yeah.
one, Jonathan McReynolds, Adulting, for sure.
Wait, there's a song called Adulting? I
Yes,
did
it's
not
a
know that.
gospel song at that. So yes, yes,
Oh, I know I've heard the name before. I'm like, I did not know
yeah,
that. Maybe I
yeah.
heard it and I didn't know. Wow. Okay, got it.
Um, I I opened up my Apple Music now too because this is a one that caught me off guard. And when you just said your favorite song, honestly, not gonna lie, well, it's not my favorite, but it is catchy. "Rich Baby Daddy" by Drake, like, is a catchy song. But don't put that on my list of inspiring because it's not inspiring. It just is. It's catchy and trendy.
I got you. I was like, oh, you want a rich
Um,
baby daddy, Amber?
no, but that's it's not inspirational at all. But
I got you. I got you.
I think it's hard to narrow down the next two songs. I think I would have to pick albums if that's fine because
That's fine.
Maverick City and Kirk Franklin's for sure. I can listen to
Okay.
that from beginning to end. And then Big Sean, Detroit 2. Really love that.
Mm, yes.
And then an honorable mention, it literally just escaped my head what it was going to be. Um, Detroit 2, Big Sean. I don't remember. I think I was gonna say The Gift, Beyonce from Lion King. But
Mm,
that one's not like resonated. That's what I wanted to say. But those two
I
for
got
sure.
you.
Detroit 2,
Yeah.
Big Sean, and Maverick
In
City. And
Maverick City.
they went off on that. And I wish I went to the tour. I gotta look it up to see if they are still going.
Yeah, I have a friend that she went in October actually. And she was in Illinois, like in
Okay.
Chicago, and she said it was amazing. Like I was looking at the
Yeah,
footage, I'm
I
like,
would
wow.
imagine so.
Yeah, she was saying that like sometimes when it is like gospel, everybody, I guess you're doing like praise and worship and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But it was she was like saying that Ty Tribbett was like cracking
I love him.
jokes, and yeah, he was his energy is on 1,000. I was like, how
Yeah.
he jump so high? Like,
Yeah, I
oh,
love him too. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's
like,
another thing about our generation, like gospel music, the old gospel music, like the Tamla Man, like the
mm-hmm.
Fred Hammond, like still really
Yeah,
hits, but we also love the like mix and like the upbeat with Maverick City or like Ty
yeah.
Tribbett. Because sometimes I hear some gospel songs, I'm like, this is a gospel song? Like we loved it.
Right, right. I mean, they be having trap beats behind the on the gospel tracks, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
hey, I mean, some of them I could get with, some of them I can't. But it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, but nonetheless, music is music. I feel like as long as you're not saying something crazy on the track, like that I can't resonate with, then
Yeah.
you know. But those are beautiful options. And like Detroit too, Big Sean definitely came different on that album. I remember when he dropped that, I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah,
Was
and I
not prepared.
always liked him, but I do think that that is one of his best albums as far as like the message, because he has
Yes.
the song "Feed" where he talks about finding your purpose,
Hmm.
and then a couple of the other songs I did, because I end Sipping Sunday with a song, and I use him and Beyonce, of course. I try to
Yes.
diversify, but I pick songs that resonate with the episode, and just so many of them
Yeah.
resonated with what I was talking about.
Yeah. That's awesome. I am going to go into our new segment, our not our new segment, our next segment,
Yep.
which is called "Shine the Light on Them." Oh, well, yeah. I want to like do music one day. Every time I say it, I hear the song in my
Yeah,
head.
I know yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's okay. But this segment is really for you to just show gratitude to the people in your life. It could be a person, it could be a couple people. But this is your space and time to give them a message and to show them how grateful you are for
I appreciate it. The first thing that pops in my head is like the BT wars and everything when people are going for so long and you're like, get them out of here.
them. I won't do that. I
But
won't do
obviously,
that.
again, my mom, my dad, my sister, I just can never stop thanking them enough. And even an extension of that, like my grandparents and just like my aunts and uncles, because again, as an adult, I have
Hmm.
reflected more so on my family dynamic and how each of them has contributed to my life, which
Right.
I do feel like all of them have in a certain way. And with my grandparents, like my grandma that passed 2 years ago, I think it's just like when you lose your last grandparent, especially, and then always like your grandma as well, like to see everything that both of my grandmothers have created, like they each had like five, six kids, like 10 plus grandkids, like great
Mm,
grands. And it's like, we would not be here without you. So to see
yeah.
that and think about that and like how just our family dynamic has changed, like how we've had to address certain things because of that loss together. I just
Mm,
am grateful for like my family, always being supportive of me, still supportive to me, and just showing up when needed. All my
yeah.
students that I've ever had, because without them too, like I wouldn't have started this. Like, I mean, my friends have always, I think, looked up to me in a way and asked me certain questions. Like we've had conversations about certain things, but it wasn't until my students would constantly like gravitate towards me and like pour into me and again help me, like
Mm,
because adults, we don't want to be at work. So like if you're with people that you are working with that are making your
yeah.
job fun and easy, like it
Yes.
means a lot. And looking back to have had bad work experiences and know that like a lot of my students, and even at these bad work experiences, the students are what was getting me through still. My students are super impactful, and seeing in the 5 years, I've had students that have graduated college, grad school, moved across states, had babies, got married, quit
Mm,
jobs, like, but they still always keep me updated. They reach out. Like that is super, super great for me. And like the feedback they just give for the Adults and Queen. My friends, obviously, because I'm a person that I'm grateful for having friends from middle school, high school, and then again being like 10 years out of college. Like those are just people that have known you at such different times, and again to
mm.
like reestablish like not like what your friendship is, but you had a episode I believe when you were talking about friendships, or maybe that was like I saw something somewhere, maybe it came,
Probably with Chris
I was like I think it
about
came up
yeah.
in that, but how you like reestablish and like see people for who they are, like not who you knew them for. And I think that
Mm,
even though my friends and I have never explicitly talked about this, I'm sure that there was like some readjustment for them and even for myself of like, okay, like, yes, I have the Adults and Queen now. We're 30 plus now. Like, I've never moved back home. Like, I've always been the friend that like never lived back home, like never really lived where everybody was. So like, what does that
mm,
dynamic look like? Like people having kids, getting married. So just thankful
yeah.
for my friends that have made it through all different stages and still are here and supporting the Adults and Queen too, because they all really, really do support it. And I know
Yeah.
people say like, oh, your friends aren't going to be your customer, or your friends aren't people supporting you, but money doesn't equate to support. I feel like the idea bouncing, like showing up for events, like reposting stuff, telling people at work about it and all
Yes.
that stuff is what
Yes.
helps. And I feel like that sums up all the
Mm,
categories: friends, family, my parents, my sister,
mm,
the future people that are going to support the Adults and Queen, because I know it's just going to keep growing and getting bigger.
yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That you
for
have
sure.
a lot to be thankful for, and that's a blessing.
Yes.
So I'm
Amen.
so happy. Listen, you could have. I know you didn't want to stop. I know you
No,
want
because I
that.
can think in my head, probably, okay, Issa Rae, and that sounds funny, but like I'm grateful for Issa Rae
No.
because I think that like being an entrepreneur is not what I thought I was going to be, or like building like this brand or building this is not what I thought I was going to do. Not because I don't think I could do it, but because like that just isn't what I thought was going to happen. I was like, I went to
Yes.
school for psychology and higher education, and I wanted to be a guidance counselor or a social worker. The work I do, yes, the work I do is in that realm, but like I'm not specifically doing that. So I think this Issa Rae and like being able to go to CultureCon, like
Yeah.
CultureCon just showed me that like one, I can do what I want to do for the Adulting Queen and I'm on the right track because the panels
Mm,
were great. But for me, I was like, this is literally all stuff that I already tell people that like I'm working with or that I already know. So it's nice to
yeah.
hear it again. But I think it made me show that like I can be on like the stage, like I can be on like whatever
Yes.
level above just being like an attendee for something like this. And
Absolutely.
for Issa, like just to know, like she started on YouTube, she has Insecure, like she has her Prosecco now. She has so many different things, and it's always on brand, and it's not taking away from her being Issa Rae. Like, so that's
Right.
what I like about her, and how like that also is inspirational. And she is what she is on her show, like on when you watch recordings of her on interviews, like
Yes.
she's always herself, which you don't get to see Black women especially being able to do that without being ridiculed or something negative being said about them.
Right. Yeah, it's funny that I just went back into Insecure,
I'm an
like
avid
first season.
rewatcher. I rewatch every day basically.
I was like, and I'm looking at the like very first episode, like wow. Like mind you, it's been a minute since I watched like every episode, but like
Yeah.
I'm like just to see where she's at now, and like even with her, this is like Hood Ray, but Productions or
Yeah, and then
something.
like she has like the other show, and then she was doing like what is that one called that got canceled? Sweet Life, which I'm sad that
Yes.
got canceled.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
you
I heard about
just
that
saying this,
one.
I need to write this down. She did 5 years of Insecure, and then it's 5 years of The Adulting Queen, and I watch it so much. We got to figure something out to infuse in this experience.
Listen, you're definitely gonna meet her one day. I feel that in my soul.
And I've
Mm,
seen her speak that into existence. I have seen her twice though. Like when I worked at FIU in Miami, Florida International University, she came and
mm.
spoke. That was in like 2016. So that was early Insecure days. And then I saw her at CultureCon. That would be amazing. I would probably cry because I already met at CultureCon TSA Bay, and I'm like, I'm 1 degree
Oh
separated
wow.
from Issa now. So
Hey, it's coming, I'm sure. But that's
yeah,
that's a beautiful list, I would say. A beautiful list.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I'm definitely going to wrap up here. I hate to, well, I always say this because the conversations on here be so fruitful. But for my last question, what advice or message would you leave for others for the future? And how do you envision the world of adulting to be by, I don't know, I would say the next 5 years.
Yes, adulting in 5 years. I feel like if the world is not gone by then, I feel like it will it will definitely be interesting because I think like the pandemic showed us that like jobs don't care about you. And jobs equates to you making money. You making money equates to your livelihood, having a home, having a car, things that you all need. I
Mm,
think in 5 years, and I hope that the world is in a better place with like the work life blend and balance of like what does this look like for you, and that people entering the workforce are able to actually like get their worth and just start a life that they want versus just having like kind of settle for whatever. Because
mm,
just working with my students, it's sad that sometimes I'm like, oh, like what do you like to do, or like what have you done after high school, and they're like, oh, nothing. And it's fine to have done nothing because once you start working you never stop in this world, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think that I hope for them that like they're just able to explore and have hobbies that translate into them knowing like what they want to do, and they don't feel like again they're settling or just having like a dead end job or like not sure what to do. Because it's
yeah,
fine to recreate yourself and be as many versions of yourself as you want, which again we're not taught. Like you're taught go to school, get this job, work that job forever, which is not what we're doing anymore. Retire, that's it. We don't even know if
Yeah.
we're going to see retirement. We don't know, like, are we going to be able to do some of these things that we're like traditionally taught? So I think if
Hmm.
people just can feel better about their work-life blend, balance, however that looks for them, and just the younger people entering can have a workforce that they feel prepared to enter, and that they like are picking what they're doing and they are feeling good about it, will help us a lot in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like even with the changing of the economy and just the like you said, the workforce and the economy, they mean they mirror each other, obviously. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting now to even see that a lot of us are just like, hey, I want to build my own business. But keep in mind though, not everybody is built for entrepreneurship. Let
Yeah.
me PSA. Not everybody's built for it.
And
I didn't want it
also
either.
And also, it's like trying to start a business is not easy and it's not impossible, because what keeps
Right,
me thinking about, like, oh, well, one, I really don't see a lot of people talking about adulting at all. So that's what kept me going and like what started it. But I feel like if somebody wants to start a business that is something that is like common, or like, oh, everybody's doing this, but everybody's not you. And we have
right.
20 different soap companies, 20 different water companies, like all of these brands on Amazon selling the same thing. You can
Hmm.
do what you want your
Yeah,
business to be.
right. You have your own lane. Nobody does it like you. You know, even if someone
Exactly.
does come around, say, "Hey, I'm talking about adulting now too," but you're not Amber.
And
So,
I support them, honestly. Like, I've
right.
found some people more recently on Instagram, because when I did start and I would search adulting, there were no pages coming up. Like, it would be about
Mm,
mental health and finances solely, not like the overall like different intersectionality things of adulting. Like, it was just mental
yeah,
health, finances, or like a meme page just like complaining about adulting or like making jokes of it. There was
yeah,
nothing like the adulting queen. And I mean, there still is nothing like the adulting queen, but there are thankfully more pages that are highlighting adulting and sharing resources. But because everybody has their own journey, like, it's never going to be the same story. Like, they might be similar,
right,
but it's not the same story at all. And like, I am appreciating that more people are coming up and that there can be collaborations, because we don't have the same lens. We didn't walk like the same life and um journey, so we can share resources to across collaboration of our communities
yes,
too. So
yeah,
I like that it's
definitely.
popping up.
Yeah, community over competition all the time.
Exactly.
Yes. So it has been an amazing, amazing time with
Sad it
you.
has to end.
I well, listen, we gonna be back. Don't
We
we gonna be
will.
back. But I just want to thank you again for your presence, your time, your wisdom, and just for you being you. You have such a
Thank
beautiful soul,
you.
I must say, and I'm so grateful to have met you. And now I have, I feel like I'm just I'm very grateful for our working relationship and our even like just friendship. I hope
Yeah,
we
no,
could be
we're
friends
friends now.
forever.
We're friends. And that's what,
Because
making friends, that is hard. That's going to be a podcast episode eventually too. But I
yeah,
feel exactly the same. So,
yes. So I before we go, tell the people where they can connect you, like on like what social sites,
yep, yep.
website.
Yes, everything is the Adulting Queen: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. YouTube has older Sip and Sunday videos on there if you would like to listen to those. Some other stuff. It's super old on there. My website is theadultingqueen.com. I do have a page for my podcast, Sip and Sunday, helping you navigate adulting because it's ghetto. And that Instagram page is Sippin' Sunday Pod, sippin' with no N, Sunday Pod.
Mm,
That's all the social media. I do have a Patreon as well. I offer resources on there, different like journal prompts, reflection sheets for at the end of each month. It's just $5 a month. I think I have 10 and 15, but $5 a month suffices for what you're going to get on there. If you know you're on a budget, adulting, I get it, but you could fit it in. That's like a coffee a month. And then lastly, Sip and Sunday Live celebrating 5-year celebration is January 21st. 2024 in Baltimore, Maryland. Location to be announced. And it's gonna basically be like this, honestly. But with like brunch vibes, DJ, photo booth, highlighting businesses. My friend is hosting for me, so come out to support the live podcast. Even if you're not from Baltimore, I'll definitely be providing information about travel, places to stay, all that kind of stuff. So come on out to Baltimore for the live events, and tickets are on my website. So everything's very
Yes,
easy to find.
yes, ma'am. And yeah, y'all better get y'all tickets. I
Oh, I'm
have a
so
feeling
excited.
it's gonna be a great one, and I'll be in the building too. So if you wanna like just join me and join in, hey, we're more than
Yes,
welcome.
bring your friends,
Uh,
bring your mom, bring your
yes,
dad. Like this is a
yes,
all adult friendly event because everybody does need it. And it's just going to be talking about again like how I started, what's going on. I'm excited about my friend hosting cuz he's going to make me be vulnerable, and that is why we picked
yes,
him.
as he should. I'm so excited for that. But I will put all your information down in the show notes
Yes.
so they can find it. And yes, thank you again for coming on. Guys, it's been great. I hope you enjoyed today's
Yay.
episode with Amber. As I always say, continue to let your inner divine glow shine, babies. I will check y'all out later.